Finally, we have all of our HTML and CSS in. We have created the markup. We've structured the page in HTML and we styled it, made it look interesting in CSS. And finally, we need to validate. So that's part 4 now of your assignment, is to validate. So we're going to run our code through an HTML validator and fix something, and we're going to run it through a CSS validator and fix any issues there too. So if you go back, if you happen to have forgotten, earlier in this unit 3, in the edit and test section, edit and test HTML and CSS, there's this validating and debugging section, and it has in it some links to some validators. So the HTML5 validator is really just the most common one. There are a couple different CSS validators that are very common, very prominent in use, and a JavaScript validator, but there's no JavaScript at all in this particular page and won't be for quite a while in what we're doing. Even if it exists, it was written by somebody else and you don't need to worry about validating it. So there's no reason that we need to use that yet, but for completion, I went ahead and added it there. But at this point, we'll go ahead and open all 3 of those, which I did. Of course, you can open them one at a time if you want. Excuse me. So I'm going to open the validator.new. And we don't have ours published yet, so we don't have an address for it. But you can do a file upload or a text field. Our file is probably big enough that doing a text field doesn't make much sense. If you wanted to do, just a line or 2 in a text field, probably makes more sense. But we can do a file upload, choose the file, and I have it there in the Unit 3 sample. The index is what I'm looking for. I do want to show the source and validate. Well, lo and behold, mine is valid. I don't have any issues. But if you had any errors there, you would want to fix them, of course. You can always give yourself an error. So go in and get rid of something and choose the file again and validate it. And it gives you errors because I went over on line 18 and got rid of my end tag. So it gave me, my end angle bracket. So it gives me lots of issues that I would need to fix. But of course, I know what the problem is because I created the problem just to see an error. And if I just put it back in there and save it and choose my file again and validate it, of course, it's valid. There are no issues with it. So be sure you fix any errors. Warnings are something that you just need to be aware of, and sometimes we'll fix those, but often we'll just leave warnings as not really knowing all there is to know about HTML yet. So it is possible to be okay with warnings. Then let's validate the CSS, and we're going to do that by file upload. For our CSS, we're going to choose our file again. We're only going to choose that site.css file and check it. Congratulations, no errors found. Woohoo, we did great. Okay, again, we could make an error if we wanted to, so we would see what it would look like, but I'd prefer not to have any errors. And the same thing basically with the CSS lint, except with CSS lint, one of the nice things about it is that you can choose what you're willing to accept or not. So there are some things that you don't care, or because you're only putting in a piece of your code and not your entire file, or not everything in this huge project or this development that you're doing, you're only putting a piece of it in, it might be that it doesn't make any sense really to accept, to look for some errors. But at this point, let's say that that's basically okay, that we want to check for everything. And I think, yeah, I think we actually have to, in this one, copy and paste. So go to my CSS file, select all of it, copy it, and paste it, and hit lint. And it tells me one of the things that I know was going to be an error. I mean, it was going to be a warning, was to disallow IDs and selectors. But that's actually okay in practice. It really is okay to have IDs in your selectors in CSS. But if you had an error, of course you would want to fix it. These are just warnings. And it's the same warning. It actually just keeps telling me the same thing. And it's okay. There are purists who would say that it's not acceptable, but it's certainly acceptable in our case. And in fact, if you wanted to, if you prefer to go through and say that you don't want to check for disallow IDs and selectors and do the lint, then you won't get any errors at all. And it says that it's all fine. No data available in table means that everything is fine. 0 warnings and 0 errors. And that's all there is to validating these. Of course, if you have more errors, you'll fix them. And then save and then continue to validate again. And of course, if you make any changes to your CSS or your HTML, when you save them, obviously you should refresh your page and make sure they look good on your page too. Don't just change them to get accepted by the validators, but also change them to be accepted. To look like you want it to look on your web page. And that's all there is to validating at this point. And we'll talk about GitHub in just a minute in the next video.